Hello and welcome to the West Yorkshire Football Show. We're here for another Leeds United latest video. We've got big news that dropped last night. Could be the first major outgoing of the summer. Leeds United have agreed a £20 million sale of Pascal Struijk. Struijk's contract at Elland Road was due to expire in June 2027, which meant Leeds risked losing the 26-year-old for nothing in 12 months if he wasn't sold or tied down to new terms. So it looks as if he is on his way to Brighton. So guys, get your comments in, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'm Stephen Brown, with me as ever to discuss this, have a chat about Pascal and what this means for Leeds going forward this summer. It is, of course, Jason Booker. Jason, well, we were all together from the West Yorkshire Football Show, fantastic night. And was it about half time or something, or quite late, maybe, I don't know, the end of the first half or something, and you were like, oh, look at this. And it was the news that Pascal Struijk and a deal for £20 million have been agreed for Pascal to move to Brighton. And I mean, it was an interesting one with Pascal anyway, Jay. We knew with the contract expiring next year, we had to do something. Now, we've clearly offered him a new deal. We've tried to get to new terms with him. So I think fans and their emotions have to remember the player could have signed a new contract as well. So he's deciding he wants to move on. I think fair enough. He's been at the club a long time. New challenge, no doubt an uplift in pay and European football, etc. So kind of makes sense from that point of view. But Jay, what's your kind of reaction to the fact that Pascal Struijk may no longer be playing his football at Leeds United?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I weren't even surprised when I saw it. I think I said to you maybe 2 weeks ago, after Ethan Ampadu had signed a new contract, if we don't hear about Pascal signing a new contract by the end of next week, we likely will see him leave. So it's not a shock to me. The fact that we were getting closer and closer to the kind of year away deadline to his contract, the start of the season's obviously looming before you know it. He's gone away and got married and all the rest of it. It felt to me like a new contract wasn't going to get accepted. If it was, it'd have been in and around the same time as Ethan Ampadu's. So, yeah, it's not a surprise to me. Not that I'm the kind of mystic Meg, but I said to you a couple of weeks ago, there's a bit of a filter of kind of direction with this, because Spurs have always been interested in Pascal Struijk. There's always been a bit of an interest there. They signed Van Hecker, who is basically a direct replacement for that signing, and then that left it open for Brighton to go and get Pascal Struijk, given the current situation. I've obviously always had my issues with Pascal. He had his best season in a Leeds shirt last season by an absolute mile, so he goes probably at the top of his value for me, even though he's only got a year left. I don't think he's ever been worth 20 million up until this point anyway. I'd struggle to, because of his injuries, because of his lapses in concentration, because of what we've seen on the pitch up until this season. So now he finds himself with a year left on his deal with the maximum amount of his value because of the season that he's just had. He's got a massive amount of experience. It's a shame. I still would have preferred us to keep him, given the fact that left-footed centre-backs are not that easy to come by, and he's obviously got so much experience and time around Leeds United, but he clearly doesn't want to stay at Leeds United. He clearly wants to, however you want to kind of butter that up and put that, he clearly has decided that this is the right time for him to move on. Fine, that's football. And I think that, I know initially I've seen it all over socials. The comments kind of started it off straight away already this morning. I think the value's fine. I think the value's fair. People will say, yeah, but Van Hecker only had a year on his contract as well. Yeah, but a lot more teams wanted Van Hecker. The likelihood is that the demand for Pascal Struijk is a lot less than that of Van Hecker. Van Hecker's, I'm not a huge Van Hecker fan. I think there's issues with him, but his reputation within the game is far higher. The expectation of his potential and whatnot is a lot higher than Pascal Struijk's, so it's probably worth half. A player is worth what somebody's prepared to pay for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree. Let's get to some of your comments then. Morning on Van Heck of a deal for Brighton at 20 million. John gutted, but if he was still here, we would end up with nothing. Cosmo, he's been a rock, but at times he's moved like one. Yeah, I mean that's the kind of stick that will be used to beat Leeds United a little bit with this is that Van Heck. I agree with you. I don't really rate Van Heck as not as a £52 million player. And people will go, well, he's got the same amount of time, but I think you kind of explain it very well there. I think with Pascal, I mean, if you look at Pascal, to be kind of really brutal with Pascal, he's had one consistent, solid season. I don't know. The only other time I can remember him even rivaling this season was that end half year in the first Premier League season under Bielsa when he struck up a nice little partnership with Llorente for a few months. I think we were better in the Championship when he didn't play, when even Ampadu dropped into that centre-back partnership with Rodon. I thought every time we did that, we improved. So, yeah, I really think that, I just think that it's ultimately, when you look at it, it's not too bad. I'm just going to switch my mic, guys, because I think, Jason's just... let me just try...
It's just a bit backgroundy, and usually it's really clear. Say again.
Is that any better?
Yes.
Yeah. I've selected the right microphone. Helps, doesn't it? Helps when you pick the right one. Well done. Right, let me have a look and just see, because we've got comments are flying in. Digger, I would love to get Rutter back in part exchange. Morning, guys. Paul, we'll welcome him back when he retires, but into all this, hope he does well nonsense. Maybe if he went abroad, but not with a Premier League team.
I agree with that. It's funny. Like,
on the M6.
Yeah, you could hear background traffic. No, I agree with that comment. Like, I think certain players, when they go off and leave, you hope that they do well. You know, like when Calvin made that big move up to Man City, I wanted him to do well.
Yeah.
When Rafinha moves to Barcelona, I want him to do well. But there is a certain kind of still competitive element to this where he's moving to. I kind of see Brighton as where we want to be. Maybe not this season, but next season or the season after. In that competition for 6th to 10th. Realistically, hopefully that's where we can get to in the next couple of years. Do we really want Brighton to do well? No, I don't. So I'm not going to sit here and say I want Pascal to do well, because if he does well, then Brighton do well. So it's kind of how I feel about it. I don't. Maybe it's just because of my agenda with Pascal, but I don't feel a certain sort of connection towards Pascal like I did some of the others of that group. Your Bamfords, your Dallas, your Aylins, your Coopers, KP. I don't feel it in the same way towards Pascal. I like him. I like the fact that he's given the club so long, but that's kind of where it starts and stops for me.
Yeah. I think just because he's been there that amount of time, it doesn't automatically mean that there's that kind of love in that way. And I agree. I mean, I think, you and I have been on the same page about Pascal the entire time we've done the show. I personally think that he's been overinflated by a certain portion of the fan base and content creators. I don't see what a lot of these others are seeing with him most of the time. I thought last season, particularly when we went into that good run, his performance has stepped up as well. And yet, listen, I love that back three combination. I just love that be-all Rodon and Struijk three. I think that I love that. I would have liked to have seen that continue. Obviously, he's 26 as well, great age. But I don't think this is an insurmountable loss. Like, if you compare it to if we'd have lost Ethan, it's night and day for me. I really think that. And I think, there's just not that same kind of, what shit, it's now I'm just excited about, right, who we're going to get in.
Well, Brownie, we've been saying since the end of the season, pretty much as soon as the season finished, there's going to be a sale. There's going to be somebody within the ranks that gets sold from the first team, because there has to be. That is just the way that it goes. And so often, we all have in the chat, us two, have seen a version of this where we stand on Pascal, then gets to the end of his contract and leaves on a free in a year's time. We've seen it. Or his value tanks, or it gets an injury, whatever. Like, the end of the day, we've not had any sales from this team since we lost against Southampton in the playoff final. There's not really been any sort of money coming back the other way. So I think it makes perfect sense. I made the point the other day in the stream that I think Gabby's a far bigger hole to fill I think that's a far more difficult conversation to have because you're going to struggle to find another left wing back that does what he does. I think we can replace Pascal. Not only do I think we can replace Pascal, I think we can improve on Pascal.
Yeah, I do.
So, yeah, I'm not going to get that down about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you because it's an interesting one you mentioned about Brighton's level as well, because you look at a player kind of leaving and choosing to go to Brighton, it's almost like maybe he thinks that's a bigger project or whatever. But I think as well, from the Leeds United point of view, we are more desperate to sell Pascal before his contract runs out than a Brighton would with Van Heck. It's like, because Brighton are more established in the Premier League, obviously they don't want to lose him for nothing in a year, Van Heck, but it's almost like they could probably take that loss much more than us. We can't do that. We literally cannot afford any player to just go for a free that is still kind of in the prime of his career and et cetera, et cetera. We can't do that because we have to manage every last penny under previously PSR and now SCR, especially when it's year-on-year transactions now. Do you know, it's you can't kick that can down the road. Like you say, we've been burnt before with that. It's
maximum profit as well, isn't it? I don't know how exactly that works with the new rules in comparison to PSR, but in a PSR world, this would be, you know, your maximum return, right? Because Pascal was considered as a free transfer academy product. So, yeah, it just makes every bit of sense.
Yeah. I'm just looking through some of these comments. Let's have a look. Gav, 20 million is good business in my opinion. John, I agree with you, Brownie, but what's your first name, buddy? Reason I don't like saying your surname. Okay, fair enough. Steve, you can go with Steve. That's absolutely fine. LUFC, what are the chances of bringing that lad from Wolves now? Yeah, you know, we'll get into kind of the potential ones that are coming in as well. Andrew, we can't afford to let him go for free. 20 million with 1 year left on contract, not a good deal. Yes, so guys, please smash a like on the video, get the video shared as well. In terms of Pascal's kind of Leeds United legacy then, where does he kind of rank for you in terms of, you know, we've mentioned how we feel about losing him, but in terms of his kind of personality and what he's given to Leeds United, how do you kind of view him? What kind of affection will you hold him in as he leaves?
It's a tough one. It's a real tough question to answer that because I think he's obviously been a great servant for Leeds United. He's played a lot of games for Leeds United. He's seen the highs and the lows, came through under Bielsa. You know, he actually played in the CDM role like Ben White tried to fill in a couple of times for KP. He got slotted into there a couple of times. I was there the day that he made his debut. He came off the bench against Cardiff at home when we were 3-0 up. And we ended up drawing that game 3-3. It was devastating, was that game, because we don't really like Cardiff, do we? There's a bit of an underlying rivalry there. Yeah. And they came back. I mean, we battered them, and Pascal came on, and he looked like an absolute fish out of water, bless him.
Because we couldn't say his name, could we? Nobody could pronounce his name.
Yeah.
Like,
is it Struijk? Is it Struijk? Yeah. But you know, he grew himself into an established member of this first team. You mentioned that run of games with Diego Llorente in the first season of the Premier League looked great. Left-sided centre-back, left-footed centre-back, which was always a mainstay in Bielsa's team. It's funny because up until that point, I never really even thought of it as a thing that you needed to have a left-footed centre-back and a right-footed centre-back. And it seems like since Marcelo set that ball rolling with Cooper and Ben White, that it's never... Well, no, it was the season before. It was Cooper and... Pontus Jansson, Cooper, Pontus Jansson, and then Ben White. It's never left Leeds United. It's like Daniel Farke had to do it as well then, and it's continued. You know, we've never had a situation really where we would have selected somebody over Pascal Struijk because Pascal Struijk was left-footed. It was almost like he had to play. So, and I kind of think now going forward that has to continue. We need a left-footed centre back, especially in a back three. So, yeah, Pascal had a great time with Diego Llorente alongside him in that first season, but then Pascal ended up being shifted out to left-back a lot in the Premier League, and I think along with Illan Meslier, they both saw a real crash in confidence, a real crash in performances, and I think it's taken them Well, I don't think Elameli has ever recovered, and I think it's taken Pascal a long time to recover from that. I blame the club for that. I don't blame Pascal for that. It was part of Pascal's development. And I think then in the 2 seasons in the Championship, certainly the first season under Daniel Farke, I think he really, really struggled. Yeah. I don't think he was ever this kind of, all commanding, demanding centre-back that people described him to be. I think, unfortunately, he got far too often got caught second-guessing himself, out of position, lack of concentration. Very, very capable defender on his day and great in the air, but deficiencies. And then it came to last season, and I think Daniel Farke's picked him back up. I think he's rebuilt him as a player. And then the move into a back three, I think, suits him perfectly. Yeah. He has more reassurance around him in terms of what his responsibility is. He's responsible for less space and less ground. When he does have his brain fart moments, it gets picked up by, in my opinion, a better centre-back in Jacobi all alongside him. And I think his distribution's improved this year. I think his distribution's always been a bit of a myth. And people say, look at his stats. That's because he's passing it 5 yards here and there constantly. And I also then made the point that when he went to medium, long-term range passes, the second that it gets controlled by his teammate, that gets put down as a successful pass. But if his teammate's having to stretch for the pass, or it's difficult for him to control, that's not factored in to the statistic. Yeah. And that's what I saw a lot of the time with Pascal's distribution, but it did get better last season. And like I say, he had a far, far, far better year than I thought he was going to have. I thought it was going to be a real problem. And he ended up being a massive part of what was a successful season. So, long story short, long answer to that question. I think he will be fondly remembered for Leeds United in a period of massive highs and massive lows. Bielsa to Jesse Marsh to Sam Allardyce and all the rest of it back in the Championship. But for me, he leaves at a great time, in one in which that we can then look to reinvest and actually improve.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's fascinating because I think what probably Pascal improved on, and probably not necessarily proved me completely wrong this season, but kind of turned the tables a little bit, was I always thought if we started to crumble a little bit as a side in a game, he was one of the first to just completely lose it. I remember in the Championship, there was a game, and can't remember if it was first or second season, and we were starting to rock, and we were playing away against somewhere in London, and his passing just completely. I remember he was sending bombs back to Meslier, like big bouncy pass backs to Meslier, and you're like, what are you doing? And I felt Pascal was always like that, and I think you spot on about the back three changed it, because I remember, like when we went to Liverpool away and went to Manchester United, I remember having thoughts in the back of my head. I'm worried about Pascal because he's got these nervy moments, these really nervy moments. And your lad made a great point last night, in the FA Cup semi-final against Chelsea, it was his blunder that kind of, led to the build-up of that goal as well. He has those moments he has bomb scare moments. Now, listen, as you mature, can iron that out, a bit more confidence, and look, we'll see how he gets on at Brighton. I think the other interesting thing with this, Jay, is as well, and I never advocate for players getting abuse or anything like that, but it does make me laugh how we hold different players in different kind of esteem when you think, well, can you imagine, if you take someone like Somerville, and if he actively rejected a contract from Leeds United, which I don't think that ever happened, it was just a release clause in there, people would have been going nuts. Or if it were Brendan or something like that. Pascal is actively choosing to leave Leeds United. We've given him a deal. So it'd be very interesting to see what all the kind of, these fans that kind of, have a go at all these different types of players, as what they will react to that bit of the news, because he's choosing to leave Leeds United.
I completely agree with you. Completely agree. I mean, how is this any different to any of the other circumstances and situations that we've had? Now, you can give a little bit more of grace to it, I guess, because of the time that he's given the club, etc., etc. But this is still a footballer that is under contract at Leeds United. That's a Leeds vice captain and all this. That he's actively choosing that this is the time he wants to leave Leeds United. So, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Because if this would be, I don't want to use Brendan as an example, but, whoever, there'd be pellers. There'd be absolute pellers. And it's kind of like, oh, it's all right because he's sexy pirate and all that. Well, yeah, it is all right. But let's not jazz it up as being something different. You know what I mean? So, I agree with you, mate. Completely agree with you. And I won't... In one breath, I can see him going on and developing and being even better. And that's a bit of a concern, obviously. But I won't miss thinking Pascal's in my back line.
No.
I won't.
No, exactly. And it feels like there's an opportunity to upgrade. Some more comments coming. Thanks for these guys. Gutted Pascal is going, but if he wasn't going to sign a new contract for 20 million, that will help us. The last of the Bielsa babes. Miller, gutted to see him go, but good business for Leeds United. Effortless should have signed Krejci before announcing that Pascal is leaving. Wolves will bump the price now and ask for 35 million for him.
They can't. There's a release clause of 25 million with Krejci.
I wonder if Rutter tapped him up. So let's kind of talk about what Leeds United do then in terms of the next move. So clearly now we're going to have to do business in that area. And from all the rumours and things, it feels like this has kind of probably been in the pipeline a while in terms of all the links we've been seeing. Is there any kind of replacement you're leaning to, or what would you like Leeds United to do? I mean, do we need a couple of centre-backs, do we think? Obviously we've still got Bornau there. Not sure if he's going to be going anywhere. Does it open a door for a certain Mr. Max Verber, left-footed playing centre-back? God forbid. What would you want to see the club kind of doing there?
I think Krejci happens now. I were a bit unsure about it before, but obviously we didn't know really what the situation with Brighton was. I think it's actually an interesting one that Brighton maybe didn't go for him themselves. There's an argument in which he could be an upgrade. I'm not 100% sold on him, if I'm honest, but the jury would be out with Krejci. I wouldn't be getting super excited. One thing that I will say is his reputation is very, very, very high. I only saw him maybe 4 or 5 times last season, and there were things that worried me about him. But he was playing in the worst team in the Premier League, and he was also playing a lot in midfield. He can play in both. He's much more natural at it than Pascal ever was. Because I know, I hated Pascal at CDM. I thought it was awful. But he can do that more naturally. Krejci is kind of Czech Republic or Czechia's best player. He's become their captain. He's kind of their main man. And I didn't really realise that up until this World Cup. And there's some well-established players within that team. So I think there's some merits to that being an exciting signing. But like I said, the jury would be out for me and I'd have to wait and see. I do think we'll end up signing at least 2 centre-backs. There might be a world in which Bornau moves on. I can see the Elvedi signing happening. That's picking up a lot of pace, but I think that'll be more as a replacement for Bornau, but a higher level than Bornau is what I would probably see Nico Elvedi as. He's had a really good World Cup as Elvedi so far as well. He was brilliant in the game against Canada, absolutely brilliant. So yeah, I think that'd be quite an exciting, mature, established signing. I think he's 29. Elvedi's been around a long time. So yeah. I've just seen the release code there. Estimated at 40. It's not I'm almost certain it's been publicised that the Krejci release clause is 25 million upon their relegation. Because bear in mind, Krejci only signed on loan to Wolves with a obligation to buy, but he then had a release clause should they get relegated. It's always been reported. Everything I've seen has been reported as being 25 million, which I think seems steep. Yeah, if I'm honest, but you pay what you pay. If that's the contract, he's just now signed a 4-year deal at Wolves or whatever as part of that deal. All sorts of weird stuff happens with signings. I was chatting with Chris yesterday because Nico Paz, who were at Real Madrid, he's just so he went on loan to Como with an obligation to buy. Real Madrid had an option in the deal to sign him back for 10 million euros. So they executed that, but then Como had a further clause within the contract to have first refusal to buy him should Real Madrid buy him back for 52 million euros, 60 million euros, 52 million pounds. So this is what happened. Real Madrid bought him back from Como after the obligation for 10 million euros and then sold him back to Como for 52 million. It literally makes no sense. It's like such a head mangle, but it's all to kind of circumnavigate where the fees and how are they amortized and all this. It's so confusing. So I don't, at the end of the day, it's not our money. We have to just trust the clubs and trust our club to spend it as effectively as possible, and they will do. We've seen how efficient this recruitment team are with regards to where they spend their money. We've already started off this transfer window, albeit being now fully confirmed with a free transfer in Harry Wilson. If we manage to sign Julian Brandt as well on a free transfer, the 25 million for Kreshke looks like pennies. Yeah. So we just have to trust them to spend the money wisely, for me.
Yeah. Can you imagine we sell Pascal and then we've got a buyback clause? 1st of July, we're buying back 10 million. There we go. That'll be all right, won't it? Stephen, don't make me feel sick. Verba can do one, fair enough. Kreshke, long throw is amazing. There we can go. He can rival Sky for the throw-ins. 78, Verba will be a useful squad player if fit, but he's broken, so we need 2 new centre-backs and at least 1 lefty.
Just on Verba, Brownie, I think some fans need to kind of get on board with the fact that Max Verba might be in and around the squad next season because his value is so low. His injury problems are such a problem. Who's going to take a chance on him without us tearing up his contract? And it just don't make sense to really do that. I think there's a high likelihood that Verba will be in and around the 25 man next season.
If Verba's fully fit, is he good enough, do you think, as a squad player in the Premier League? Because I remember when he came in initially, he was decent and he looked like our best kind of player, and then we kind of infected him with that disease that all Leeds United players suffered from in that relegation season where they forgot how to play football and he looked a bit useless. And then obviously, he goes on loan, he comes back for the second championship year and then he's interrupted by injuries. But in terms of just him as a footballer, I mean, he's all right, isn't he? He's not useless, really. He's decent-ish. I'm sure best version of Verba would be good enough as a squad player.
I'd agree with you. I think that is the problem is that we're unlikely to see the best version. But people forget that he actually contributed in the championship winning season, the 100-point season. He scored a goal that season at Ellen Road. He provided the pass to the Nonto to Solomon for the winning goal down at Plymouth. He came on the pitch and actually set up that move. I've always quite liked him. I thought, and I'll still stand on this, I think a fully fit Max Verba at the beginning of that season displaces Pascal Struijk. Yeah. I thought
we both thought that was going to happen, didn't we? Yeah,
we did. And I don't think that's that wild to say because Verba's, 50 odd appearances, I think it is for Austria. He's very experienced. Even though he's had these injury issues, Bundesliga clubs kept on taking opportunities with him because they saw him as potentially improving their squad. We saw what he was capable of, albeit in a terrible team when he first came into that Premier League team. He was a bit of a shining light, really, from January onwards. So he's capable, but his body just doesn't allow it. It'd be a real rebuilding job. I don't see him ever being able to get to that fitness level, unfortunately. No. But I think he will be a backup option to whatever left centre-back we potentially sign. Or he'll be in and around, that left-back, centre-back conversation next season. Because we're just going to struggle to get rid of him. And then I think he'll probably leave at the end of next season. I would imagine he'll probably be on the free transfer at the end of next season. So, that's how I see him. Loads of great comments, by the way, with regard to back and forward. And I can agree and disagree in different measure with all of them, even though I'm not saying anybody else is wrong. I think the transfer fee in particular is such a interesting debate, and you're going to get polar opposites of people thinking one thing or another. But one thing I will say is you can't just look at the fee and then compare it to another transfer and say, well, it should be more because of that transfer. Every deal has got different situations. So Kreshke is a great example. Let's just say Kreshke costs us 25 million. We're having to pay 5 million more to replace him, who's a championship player. Yeah, but Kreshke's just signed a brand new contract at Wolves. He's younger. His reputation's sky high. And he has got a release clause that means that. So it's just totally different grounds, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And just to kind of sum up that as well, kind of the polar opposites, two comments I want to kind of flash up one after the other. Top Banana, think it's a poor price at 20 million for a Premier player. Doesn't make sense. And then you've got 78, 20 million is not low in the final year of the contract. It's a good price. We bought better last season for less.
Jacobiol cost us 5 million less.
Yeah. Which that does put it massively into perspective. Yeah. Paul, we forgot how good Verba was when he first came in, but his attitude rubs fans up the wrong way. Yeah, I mean, the other interesting aspect with this is, Jay, is will the back three continue going into next season? Obviously, it was massively successful for Leeds. It kind of made sense of Pascal. It made sense of be all that's three at the back. And you would say, look, if we continue that way, we need to kind of make sure we're filling those positions. But it's going to be interesting to see if we definitely continue with a three. I mean, we're not sure, are we, really? We can't, because if you improve in other areas of the pitch, Farke may want to go back to, older or preferred formations that he's used before. So you've got to factor that in as well in terms of what are we going to be looking like? What are we going to be wanting to do in terms of that position as well?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there very much is a world in which we will go back to the 4-2-3-1. I think, again, people get lost in the detail of that. They see the formation and think that the tactics are assigned by the formation. The two different things. So you can play in a 5-3-2 or a 3-5-2, but then still try and play the tactics that Farke used to play in the Championship and it not work. Yeah. The difference is how direct this team is or not. The formation doesn't necessarily dictate that. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So the shifting back to a 4-2-3-1 doesn't necessarily worry me so much. It's more the style in which we decide to adopt when we're playing that worries me. It depends who the signings are, where the quality is. Because if you remember, when we were playing in the 4-2-3-1, it wasn't so much that we were too open defensively, really. It was that we were struggling to create chances. That was the real problem because we didn't have the quality out wide. Yeah. We were still trying to do what we were doing in the Championship, but we were trying to do it at a higher level with Dan James on the right and Willie Gnonto on the left. This is before Noah Okafor really made an impact. And we were struggling to create chances. We didn't have the 10 that could unlock defenses because that's not about Brendan's game. So we adopted the 3-5-2, went more direct, gives us more defensive solidity. But I remember talking to you about the 3-5-2 being an issue during, even during the good run, we were drawing too many games because it created other issues. It does because of then the static positions of players, particularly in the midfield. You then sometimes get overrun, or you can't get players up and alongside Dominic Calvert-Lewin quickly enough because you've got more defensive players behind you. So it creates issues in other areas. But if you sign a Julian Brandt, as an example, who's going to be much more quality within that 10 space of the team, you could potentially go back to a 4-2-3-1 and have Ethan Ampadu just sitting deeper. So you've still got that defensive rigidity of a back three. Yeah, but then you've got the quality in front of it to make the difference. The problem is we didn't have that quality to make the difference when we then had the ball. So I just think it's fascinating. We'll see. I have a feeling we'll probably flip between the two. I think we'll probably play both, which I think is the right route.
Yeah. Just to kind of get the best here. Some other comments, Paul. With Ethan, I feel we only need a back two as he can make a three if needed. We need a centre back with pace to replace Pascal. I mean, also kind of moving on. I mean, you do wonder if this affects the other players with expiring contracts as well. Just what I want to bring up before that. John mentions Aronson 1 year, Gruev 1 year to go. I mean, it's obviously different players. I mean, the Gruev, it's kind of skewered a little bit by the injury because who's going to really want to go there, really? Brendan is an interesting one, Gav. I think Brendan goes next summer on a free. I can't see any takers. So it will all come to a natural end next summer. I mean, this is the thing you see. It's like dominoes, isn't it, Jay? One goes and then we'll see kind of what happens. Brendan's a really interesting one. I mean, again, we paid a big fee for him. We've had a lot of game time from him, especially these last couple of years. He's had a real impact. But what do you think you do? I mean, can you imagine many takers for Brendan? You know, I mean, what kind of fee could you expect to get? I mean, it's a bit of an interesting one, but I'm guessing, like I think you mentioned on the other show, that contract talks will be after the World Cup, and that's why we're not getting any kind of news on that at the minute, possibly.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're being really disrespectful saying that Brendan won't have any takers. I think a lot of clubs would want Brendan. Brendan had a really good season last season. He had a really good season. I think he basically played 38 games in the Premier League. He contributed decent numbers. You know, we have to watch him and we see his frustrations. So yeah, sure. But you know, for a manager, Brendan Aronson would be an absolute dream. He's an absolute dream. He's always available. He's always there. He's always prepared. He works his nuts off. I bet he's great around the dressing room in terms of his attitude. In training, I bet he's a nightmare. He'll push everybody to high levels. I like him, so I get it. I know I gas him up a little bit, but I don't overinflate his ability. I recognise his deficiencies, but the lad's also only 25. And he's developed massively, I think, in between what we saw last season and what we saw when we were last in the Premier League. The lad's levels above what he was. I didn't think he'd be able to contribute at all in the starting lineup at the beginning of last season. I thought he might be able to come on and affect the game from the bench. There were a period of last season where he was absolutely vital. And it just so happened that it fell in the time where our run changed. After the Manchester City game, you go and have a look. Brendan Aronson was a huge part of that squad. So I think we've been really disrespectful saying that nobody would want him. The problem is would we be able to receive a fee that would be worth then selling him? That's the different question. Could we get 10 million? I reckon we probably could get 10 million for Brendan Aronson, if I'm honest. 15, 20 million? No. So then you're in the... How do you replace him for that? Because he's a player that's prepared to sit on the bench, come on and do a job, get some starts, take his opportunities. He's well versed within the club now. He's established. He understands the situation. I feel almost certain he'll sign a new contract. And some fans are like, we should have sold him and all this. Like, no, because we're still protecting the investment. I reckon Brendan's probably got another year or two of pretty good development under Daniel Farke. 26, 27, when we have then totally outgrown him, we then sell him. Sure. This is not Brendan over Leeds United, but there needs to be a changing of the guards, and the timing will be right for us to outgrow Brendan completely. That's not it yet. This team's still going to finish probably 15th, 14th for that next season. Brendan's a player that can contribute to that.
Yeah. Effortless. Farke likes Brendan. Will get offered a new Leeds contract. MLS would take him for 10 million. And yeah, I mean, 9 goal contributions last year as well. We can't forget that. Gav, we can't rest on our laurels now in the Premier League. We have to upgrade now in every single window. Getting it back to Struijk then, I mean, an interesting one here from Callum. Will Struijk be a good signing for Brighton? And that is an interesting one. And because obviously we know about Brighton's recruitment model. We know how well they recruit. I'm a little bit I'm not surprised, but I'm kind of, because they do get their recruitment spot on, and look, they may be plucking Pascal at the perfect time where that physical and mental peak is kind of, coming together. But it's going to be fascinating to see how he gets on at Brighton. I can see a world in which he has a few bomb scare moments and fans get on his back and it's not all plain sailing. I mean, even a player as good as Rutter, it's been mixed to say. It'll be fascinating to see how he gets on there, Jay.
Yeah, well, I mean, they don't get them all right.
No, they don't.
No. No recruitment team does. I was talking with somebody the other day about Dennis Undav, who was there. I mean, he's ripping it up for Germany. His stats for Germany are ridiculous. He's done unbelievably well in the Bundesliga this year, and he was awful at Brighton. Yeah. And is that a sign that they did it right but got him wrong, or you know what I mean? Because they still identified a good player, but sometimes it just don't work at clubs. I'm sure there'll be several others. I'm sure some of the chat will be able to say others as well. I'm not sure. I'll be dead honest. I'm not. We're on the back of Pascal's best season as a professional. He does have bomb scares. They will still be there because his concentration levels. It just feels like it's something that won't ever evolve. It depends on whether he will play in a 3 or a 4. I think Brighton play a 3. I think, and that will suit him. My guess will be I think he'll just be all right.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll pull up any trees. I don't think he'll be like. I don't think Brighton are like, oh god, we stole. We got a right bargain from Leeds when we signed him. Yeah, I just think it'll be it feels big to us because he's been such a big part of Leeds United for years and years and years.
Yeah,
I don't think it'll be a rippling transfer throughout the Premier League that people take that much notice of.
No,
I don't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And I think the other aspect to this, and what I realised, I kind of caught myself this morning when I was thinking about it, was like, I'm at a point with the club where I have complete faith in our recruitment team.
Okay.
And it's, there's a Leeds United fan, we've not always been able to say that through the years, but I have complete and utter faith we'll get this done. I mean, you consider a couple of years ago, we had really big challenge. We lost Somerville and Rutter and Gray. We lost, goals, assists, talent, everything you would hate to lose. And the way we managed to kind of fill those gaps and improve generally and win the league was incredible. And I realised this morning, I was like, yeah, I'm fine with it because I just trust our recruitment team and players to bring on. I mean, it's to the point, the recruitment's been so spot on now, Jay. It's like, if the transfer fee is low, if they're a little bit older, I'm not bothered because I'm like, they've picked this player, they've picked this signing, so I have absolute faith it's going to be the right target. Like you say, you don't get everything right, but their hit rate is like 98.9% or something. It's ridiculous. So, I have complete faith that we'll also potentially upgrade from Pascal as well, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I agree. And we've got evidence to kind of back that up. You're absolutely right. That summer were devastating. After losing to Southampton, losing, especially Rutter and Somerville, there was such a huge part of what we did going forward. Manor Solomon comes through the door under a barrage of kind of like anger from fans, 50 grand a week, why are we paying that? Da, 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 da. He was essential. Laj Ramazani came in, we paid decent money for him. He still created a great backup option for Manor Solomon. Brendan came back in. We decided to kind of go down that route, and he contributed huge. In a different way to Jorginho Rutter. I'm not comparing the two in terms of talent, but it changed the system. Joe Perreault was more seen as then the number 9. Daniel Farke dealt with all of that. Yeah. I was thinking about this myself this morning because Pascal Struijk's been basically a Daniel Farke mainstay, but he gets it put at him a lot that he has his favourites and he sticks with them regardless forever and ever and ever and ever. And it's nonsense. Joe Perreault, we saw that last year. Joe Perreault was his man. And after the Arsenal away game, we barely saw Joe Perreault. I don't think he started another Premier League game. You know what I mean? Like, he's got no loyalty to the wrong player. And I do believe there'll be a world in which Daniel Farke would look at Pascal Struijk and know his pros and cons, but decide that his benefits outweigh his negatives previously. Yeah. But I think when they've been discussing the plans this season, this summer, he would have been looking at Pascal and being like, look, if I have to sell somebody and we've got these situations with value, you know what, we can sell Pascal and we can replace him with somebody that's better. I believe there's a world in which that conversation is very likely to have happened because he will know full well what Pascal's limitations are.
Yeah, 100%.
And, for all we know, he's had that conversation with Pascal that, look, we're going to look to improve on you anyway if you stay. We're wanting you to sign a new contract, but the competition is going to be more difficult for you. What do you want to do? And Pascal's gone, well, no, actually, I don't fancy that. I'm going to move. I mean, this is what happens.
Some more comments then. Mr. Whitesnake, thanks for joining us, mate. We weren't far from Brighton as the table goes. Callum can see him mainly being a squad player for Brighton this season, Conference League and Cups. Some other bits and pieces from the transfer window: effortless 30 million for Shea Charles, 30 million for Suzuki, and 5-10 plus 20 million Pascal money for a new centre back. That is 70 million. The majority of our budget doesn't leave much for a new striker. I mean, the Shea Charles one, that fee seems to be creeping up. I think there's rumours we've put another bid in, 25 million, and then Southampton are pushing for 30, which starts to feel like a bit of rarefied air. It's like, oh, don't know about 30. This Suzuki thing is being mentioned at 30 million as well. What are your kind of feelings on that kind of area there, Jay?
I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because we're only surmising, guessing, predicting, and we don't really all know the details. I think you have to remember that Shea Charles is a 23-year-old centre midfielder.
Yeah.
And so again, like people have been saying, well, Pascal's worth 20. and he's 26. Like there's the big difference. There is still a difference. I think 30 million steep. I think 25 million is probably on the borderline of being too much as well. I'd agree. Given the circumstances, 20 to 25 is probably in and around where, but it is what it is. You know, I've just seen John's comment there. City want 20% of the sale. They'll have a sell-on fee, so that then affects what Southampton do. It's the same situation we've had with Willie Gnonto all this time. Half the reason that we've not sold Willie Gnonto because of the 50% that we need to give to his ex-club. So I think if Shea Charles is seen as that important, then we'll make that one happen. I think the Suzuki deal, I don't see this ever happening, if I'm honest.
No.
I really don't. We've got Lucas Perry, who we signed for 15 million. Unless we know that we can get 15, 20 million for Perry, why would we go and invest in another really expensive goalkeeper, in which would be a huge risk? That feels like a big risk to me. I fully believe the goalkeeper situation will be Carl Darlow's the number one. And I don't see Lucas Perry sticking around to be number two. Maybe he will, maybe what, but I don't see it. I think we'll sign a younger goalkeeper. Zetterstrom, I think, makes a lot of sense from Derby, between 7 and 10 million. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I think that would be more the direction that we would go in. Give Darlow it for another year. Tell him, look, we want you to develop this lad. This lad's going to be taken over from you in a year's time. If your form drops, you're going to lose your position. But as it stands, you're the number one for the next year. And I think that makes sense. So I'm not concerned by where the budget goes. We've brought 20 million of it back. We've got 120 million to sign on X amount of players. You know, people are now going to start getting like stressed out about not putting 30 million into a striker. Well, just a reminder that we signed 2 last season for free. And they were both bangers. You know what I mean? So like we just let them do their thing, because everything, let them cook. I don't think I'm young enough to say that, but
if you are, I definitely aren't. So, 30 million too much for Charles Southampton being greedy.
It's their right to be greedy, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's their right to be greedy. There is, you know, at the end of the day, they're running the risk, the tightrope of him saying, right, okay, sod you, I'm going to run my contract down and leave on a free in a year's time. That is their right to run that risk. And if that's what they want to push, then that's what they want to push.
Yeah, exactly. 25 million plus binoculars seals the deal. Yeah. Good stuff. So just kind of before we finish up then, Jay, kind of final thoughts. It's the first big major outgoing of the season. We predicted that it was going to be a window where incomings and outgoings, we knew there were probably going to be high profile players that were going to leave. Pascal, certainly, you know, whether you kind of thought it was exceptional or whatever you thought, it's a big name to leave and sends ripples through the fan base. But I think ultimately I'm glad to see the club acting. And, you know, my worry was what those outgoings look like. For all the praise for what they've done, kind of incomings, it was always outgoings and what do we do with players running down contracts, etc. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, but it means they're on it. There's movement. We're getting activity. We're not just kind of waiting until the last couple of weeks of the window. We are getting our business done.
Yeah, it was always going to be a busy window for incomings and outgoings. I think, you know, this makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons that we've mentioned throughout the stream. There'll obviously be some concern if it starts then being Gabby as well, and, you know, this name then and whatever. You know, if there's 2 or 3 of the first team from last season that start then moving on, recruitment's really going to have to be good. But everybody else the price. I'm hopeful that this makes Gabby, you know, now 50, 60 million left back if we let him go, rather than 35, 40. You know, that's my hope when it comes from a selling perspective. But yeah, there's loads to do. There's loads of work to do. Not because we've got a bad team, but just because there's such a fluid situation in terms of then how you then progress as a football club. But from Pascal, you know, particular, I'm happy for him. I think he's getting a decent move. I don't hope he does particularly well, because I want Leeds to finish in front of Brighton. I kind of want us to always then be able to say, yeah, we had Brighton's pants down. Like, that's the route that I would prefer to take. But it is what it is. He's had a great 8 years at Leeds. I don't think we owe him anything. He's had a good career. because of Leeds United. He's now chosen to leave Leeds United, and that's kind of where I sit with it. I'm not devastated like I was when Jorginho Rutter went to Brighton. I'm not devastated like I would have been in Ethan Ampadu would have signed, agreed a deal somewhere else this summer. Kind of feel just a little bit like I kind of expected it. So all too much, all over. Fair enough. Yeah. Good luck to Pascal.
Yes, good luck to Pascal, but don't do too well. Don't do too well.
Yeah, not too well.
The only thing. Good stuff. Just a couple of comments then to finish up on Gail. What a loyal servant Pascal has been. John, Pascal knew his time was up. Effortless Pascal has been great. Wish him all the best. Brighton will be a tough team next year. Let's have a look. As lose minus 11 Prem points when in Europe due to low squad size and number of matches, possible relegation team. God, can you imagine? I don't think so.
I doubt it.
I doubt it. Good stuff. Well, thank you so much to everyone who got involved. Loads of fantastic comments on the video. If you've not liked the video already, please do give it a like, give it hype as well. Get subscribed to the channel as well, because any news drops like this, me and Jay are going to be straight on giving our takes on everything. So keep your eyes peeled on the channel, because we will be around. I'm sure there's going to be a lot going on over the course of the next few weeks as there. But thank you very much for watching. I've been Stephen Brown, with me Jason Booker. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, mate.
And we will see you again soon. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.
I'll end it.